welcome back to my channel. So today I have a highly requested video that I've been getting from a lot of you guys lately, and I finally had a chance to film it. It is an updated, full detail, my go-to bridal makeup look. I feel like a lot of my bridal clients recently have been kind of going for a much softer look these past few months, and a lot of you guys have noticed the difference in my bridal looks recently, and it's really just skin focused and not so heavy on the eyes, although I still have my extra clients here and there that love a really smoked out or detailed eye look. But for the most part, I feel like a lot of my brides have been leaning and gravitating more towards this soft, romantic type of look. Now, full disclaimer, this doesn't mean that this is my go-to bridal look in the sense that this is what I want all my brides to wear. I always let my clients give me their input and show me exactly what it is that they're looking for, and also at the same time incorporating what they're used to seeing on themselves more or less. I tell all of my bridal clients, your wedding day is not really the most ideal day to try something new and out of your comfort zone. I would definitely say stick to what you like to see, but we're just gonna amp it up a little bit more. And really what it comes down to is the face makeup. For me, I personally believe that if you have a strong base with flawless skin, you could do anything with the eyes and you'll get away with it. And I think that makes for the perfect bridal look, is for them to feel like themselves, but just with that little extra oomph, if that makes sense. Also longevity, to make sure that it lasts them all day and night. In this video, I was lucky enough to have a friend of mine and fellow boss babe, Vero. She is the owner of V Beauty Lashes, and we're actually using some of her lashes in this video as well. So if you guys haven't checked her out, haven't checked out her lash page, definitely go ahead. I will link it down below in the description bar. I reached out to her because I love her face. I think she is absolutely stunning, and she was totally down to be my model for this video. So again, thank you, Vero, so much for lending your beautiful, beautiful face. Alright, so without further ado, let's move on to the tutorial. So here is my lovely model. Her skin is cleaned and prepped and ready to go. We are going to be priming with the Benefits Professional Primer, which is one of my favorites. Not necessarily for mattifying or for moisturizing, but just for smoothing out the texture. You would want to take care of the client's skin needs ahead of time, such as moisturizing if they're on the drier side, or going in with something for oil control. I like to use the NYX Can't Stop Won't Stop primer if my client is extremely oily in certain areas. But one thing to clarify with your client ahead of time is to make sure that they show up to their appointment, or when you show up to their venue or hotel, that they are aware that their skin should be cleansed, toned, and moisturized, and any special creams should be applied beforehand and with enough time to let the skincare really settle into the skin. When it comes to the primer, I personally love to do this with my fingertips because I also get a better feel for the client's skin itself, and I can feel around to see if there's any problem areas, any areas that are still dry, and that I can go in and add a little bit more face oil or moisturizer if need be. I'm then going to add a little bit of the MAC Strobe cream, which is one of my favorite illuminating creams to use. I have quite a number of different ones in my kit that I will be showing in an updated kit video for you guys. But I'm using this one to just give her skin that little bit of extra luminosity and glow. I'm applying this with the Baby MAC stippling brush that I absolutely love. It's so soft, it's synthetic, and it's just to apply the cream evenly. This won't give you a greasy look. It's not gonna make you look overly hydrated or overly shiny, which some clients do worry about, especially if their wedding is gonna be outdoors and if they already tend to have an oilier skin type or T-zone. It doesn't give off the illusion of oilier skin. It will just give off a little bit of luminosity from underneath the foundation, which is very pretty, and I love to see that in bride skins. So here you see me color swatching her for the foundation. I like to color swatch at least 3 foundations if I'm unsure about the color I want to go with. You guys know I always like to use a little bit of a warmer foundation color so that there is no flashback and they don't look too washed out. And if I need to, I will neutralize with the highlighting and contouring and all of that other stuff that's going to come along. And what I like to do is just swatch near the chin and jaw area to really match to their chest. So with that being said, I felt like her skin tone on the décolleté was a little bit different than that on her face, which is why I went with number 3, the Milani Conceal and Perfect Foundation, which if you've been following me for a while, you guys know that this is my go-to foundation for my kit. I use it on everyone and I absolutely love it. I think it's great for events. What I like to do is pump out a little bit of the foundation onto the back of my hand or a mixing palette, and then I take this synthetic foundation brush and apply it all over the skin surface. This will help me utilize the foundation in a smart way, so I'm not over applying foundation in certain areas. I'm able to spread it out as much as possible and seeing what it covers just as is, and if need be, if any areas need extra coverage, I will go in and apply more. And I find that I find myself using a lot less foundation by doing this, and if I need more foundation, I can still use whatever I poured out onto the mixing palette. So it's easy to access, but it's a great way to control how much foundation you are applying, because I love foundation, I love full coverage, I love to cover every imperfection, but there is such a thing of applying too much foundation, and that's where that heaviness feeling comes in, or even that heavy look. So after applying with a kabuki brush, I am using Sigma's foundation brush to press into the skin. We're going to begin our highlighting. So I'm taking the Tarte Shape Tape Concealer in medium sand right underneath the eyes. Correction, that was light sand, and I tend to go pretty light with the under eye highlight. I like it to be very bright. I feel like it really lifts up the under eye area. If a client does not prefer this style of makeup, I have them let me know ahead of time so I know not to go too drastic with the highlighting underneath the eye. I apply this with a flat brush. I'm using the MAC 252, which is one of my favorite brushes of all time. And I make sure to really feather this out towards the top of the cheekbone along the side of the nose. This will just help enhance the nose contour later on. And then I also apply a little bit in the center of the forehead, and very rarely will I apply any on the chin. Again, this kind of just plays back into the if I need to neutralize the foundation a little bit, but I felt like the foundation was a really good match for her as far as color. So I'm basically just letting this stay in the center of the face, not so much in the chin area. I'm then going to be taking another dense blending brush. This one is from Crown. It doesn't have a specific name, but it's very small and it has a dome shaped top. So that way I can go right into the inner corner of her eye without irritating or poking her eye with a huge brush or anything like that. You can also use a damp beauty blender. I mentioned this in a video a while back that I've just really been finding myself gravitating towards brushes again, like how I used to back when I first started. And I feel like I just kind of switch between tools as time goes on. Sometimes I'll revisit the sponge, sometimes I'll revisit brushes. Right now I'm having a brush moment. I'm just really loving the application process and the way that the application turns out with the brush. So in this case, and in just some cases, depending on how I see the application going, I will either just drag that concealer all across the nose and cover the nose entirely as well, and that's what I did here, or you can just leave it blended up to the bridge of the nose, and then you can set it like that, and that will create a little bit of a natural nose contour as well. So now moving on to contouring, I'm going to be using the Mehron HD Cream Foundations, which I have mentioned before. I love these creams. I use them for highlighting and contouring, but you can totally use them just for foundation as well. They go on so smooth and they make the skin look like actual butter. Like they just make the skin look beautiful. They're just one of my favorite products, and I've been using them for quite some time already. So just with another small brush, I apply some on the forehead and also on the contours of the cheek. And that's basically all that, like those are all the areas that I have been applying cream contour lately. I'm not taking it on the nose or on the chin or on the jawline unless the client really requests it or if I see like a need for it. But I find that the areas I want the most contour and warmth and just that dimension is the forehead and the cheeks. Other than that, I feel like everything else can be done with just powder alone, and you kind of avoid looking overly done or overly contoured. I know that the real contoured look was such a big thing and there was such a moment in it, and there's like still to this day people who really love it. I still really love it, but on occasion, not for every single client and not for every single makeup application. And I feel like for brides, it's like I said, a lot of my clients have been leaning more towards this soft romantic look. So we're kind of holding back on the contouring a little bit, because keep in mind, not only are we cream contouring here, but for all my bridal makeup applications, I not only cream contour, but I'm also going to set everything with bronzer powder and bronzing and contouring powders as well. So we're going through layers of makeup, and with those layers, obviously it's more makeup and you don't want to run the risk of it looking like too much in the end. So once all the contour and highlight is blended, I'm just going to take whatever is left on that foundation brush that we've been using, and I'm just going to go over the edges of everything to marry it all together. Spending a lot of time on the face is key, and making sure everything is just pushed into the skin and really blended together. You cannot take too much time blending the skin. The more you pat down and blend, the more that the foundation is settling, the more it's drying, and the more that everything is going to start to settle in and just start to look more and more flawless, because you're continuously blending. So once I feel like it is time to set the face, I am going to assess if the client needs a lot of setting or if there's only certain areas that need setting. For her skin type, she wasn't, like I said, overly oily or too dry. So I am just going to be setting the center of her face, basically where we place the highlight. So I'm using my favorite RCMA No Color powder with a powder puff, and I dispense some on the back or on top of my mixing palette, and just taking that powder puff and applying this directly underneath her eyes to prevent the under eye area from creasing, and then also in the center of her forehead. And usually while you're applying the foundation and contour and highlight, you can start to see areas that maybe need a little bit of extra setting. So if you like want to take it along the laugh lines, around the forehead, anything like that, it'd be a good time to do so now. For the rest of her face, you could either go in with a foundation powder for that extra coverage, which if you have someone that needs that extra coverage or wants it, definitely go in with a foundation powder. For her skin, it's pretty much all covered at this point. There are any imperfections that need to be covered. So I felt the need to go in with just a light layer of extra powder that has a little bit of a tint of color to it. So I am using the Milk setting powder in the medium shade, and it just sets the rest of her skin beautifully. So here we are, bringing back in more of the contouring bronzing step. Like I had mentioned, I am taking a large powder brush and just setting those areas with the Hoola bronzer from Benefit. And I'm also going to warm up the chin at this point, since we didn't do any of that with the creams, and then also the tip of her nose. But again, just really focusing on the hollows of the cheek and the forehead. Then to set all the highlighted areas, I'm going to be using this MAC contouring palette. I'm using the shade Emphasize with an angled Luxie brush, and I like to go in small circles with this brush and this product. The product has a bit of a sheen to it, and the way that the sheen really lays on smoothly is by really smoothing out those like small pigments within that powder. So if you do circles, it kind of buffs it onto the skin like how you would with foundation powder. Then with a real hair brush, to not overly apply product again, because real hair bristles will hold product, not really dispense it too much. I'm gonna be taking a little bit of the contouring powder from that kit. There's 3 different shades. You would choose the appropriate shade for your client. And I'm just gonna hollow out the back of her cheekbones more. And then finally do the nose contour. I'm using the famous, my all-time favorite and famous Morphe R8 brush. I use the powder on the very edge of that brush to just create the nose contour. I will apply it first to the sides and kind of assess exactly where I want the nose contour to be placed. I feel like I need to bring it in closer, then I'll apply more. And then once I feel like it is in a good placement, later on I will go back over it and kind of just soften it out a little bit. So for highlight, we're going to be using the Anastasia and Amrezy highlighter. I'm taking this onto a Morphe tapered brush. And again, this is also a product that you'd want to ask your client how they feel about highlight. Not everyone loves an intense highlight, and that's understandable. So before you start going ham, if you're like me, and because I love highlight, you definitely want to clear that up with your client first. So after applying to the cheekbones, a little bit on the forehead, Cupid's bow and chin, I like to take a little bit on the bridge of the nose as well. For the nose, once I apply it with a brush, I'll go back in with my finger to smooth it out just to make sure nothing looks too harsh. And just a quick side note, if you see texture anywhere on the face, you want to avoid putting highlight on those textured areas. For blush, I'm going to be using the Morphe blush palette, the 8C palette, which is the cool tone palette. It has such beautiful soft blush, soft pink colors. So applying that with the large powder brush and just applying from the back to the front so that way we avoid a heavy hand with the blush. I'm just going to gently swoop that across her cheeks. And then I will apply a little bit more of the RCMA setting powder just to chisel out that contour and to have it set really, really well while I do her brows. Her brows are already pretty fantastic. She made my job pretty easy. So in this case, I just brush through them, and then I'm going to be taking the Tarte Shape Tape once again with that MAC 252 brush and just using the very tip of the brush to carve out the bottom of her brow before applying that concealer all over her lid. This is going to be our eye primer. I have been using this concealer as eye primer for a hot minute already, and I still really love it. I think it's perfect. It just blanks out any discoloration, any veins, anything on the eyelid that will mess with the appearance of the eyeshadow, and then it also just makes the eyeshadow adhere really, really well. So it's just a great product all around to use as eye primer. I really, really love it. And then once it's all covered, I will just continuously pat down that concealer to make sure it begins to dry really well, dry really evenly, and dry really opaque. So this is also going to take a little bit of extra time, but it's well worth it to just get that nice, even base. Think of the eyelid as like the face again. Like how I mentioned, there's never too much blending on the face, and like really setting that foundation in the skin. Same goes for this eye primer. There is no such thing as too much blending of this eye primer in, or of this concealer on the eye, and just really setting it into the eyelid. This is just going to create that nice, strong, flawless eye base. Once everything's all set in, this is your option. You can either go in directly with the shadow if you want like a really intense pop of color, because the tackier and more wet the concealer is, the more the eyeshadow is going to hold and pop with color. Or you can set it with some light setting powder like how I'm doing here if you're going to do a very soft eyeshadow look. So since we're going with something pretty soft for the day, we're just going to brush over that with any excess powder on the brush that we're using while blending off that baking. So for the brows, I'm going to be using some brow powder. If a client has pretty good brows already on their own, I see no need to go in with a really heavy brow unless they are requesting it. They like a really sharp contoured brow. Most brides I feel look really pretty with a soft brow, but that has a strong base. It just gives the brow a fuller look without looking too overly done or too overly, carved out. So in this case, I'm using the Anastasia brow powder in soft brown, and I'm just going to be taking that where I see that it needs to be like filled, because she, like, again, has pretty good brows already. There's just a few areas that were a little bit sparse, and that's what we're just going to fill in. And then once I am done filling in, I will be taking some clear brow gel. One of my favorites is the Benefits 24-Hour Brow Setting Gel. It smells like bubblegum, so it smells really good. And it's just a really good, strong brow gel, so it keeps all her brow hairs in place. For the eyes, I'm going to be using a little bit of the shadows from the Norvina palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills. I really loved this palette for Bridal. I feel like the shade range was so pinky and cool tone and not like the typical warm palette that we have been seeing lately. And I just loved it for my brides. I felt like it gave me the great color combination that most brides are looking for. So the first color that I'm using is Eccentric, and it's a matte shade. It has a little bit of warmth in it, but it's not completely red or orange. It's just like this really nice neutral bronze color. And I'm using this on a medium-sized blending brush, starting from the outer corner, working my way in, and then topping it off just on the outer corner with a little bit of incense from the palette as well. Now on the lid, and guys, that's like the only shadows I use. I just use 2 shadows. This is how simple and soft we've been going lately with these eye looks for brides. Now on the lid, I'm taking a little bit of the NYX glitter primer. It's a little bit of a tacky primer, but if you're gonna do shimmer, I highly recommend using this, even if you're not doing glitter. Just using this underneath shimmer shadows will make those shadows not only adhere so much better, but it's just gonna make them pop. So most brides, I will say, will either go with just an all matte eye, or they want that little like shimmer. So just to keep things a little bit fun still, we went with shimmer. Again, I'm still using actually no, I'm not using the Norvina palette. We switched over to Soft Glam at this point, which is another great neutral palette to use for brides. So for this one, we're using Pearl from the Sultry palette, and I am just applying that. It's really smoothing that pigment down. So from the crease down, and then just kind of patting it on the outer edges to blend. And then just to transition to a darker shade, we're using Teak from the Sultry palette as well, only on the outer like third of the eye. And then on top of the shimmer, I wanted to amplify it just a little bit. I'm using a loose pigment from NYX Cosmetics. This is, I think, pigment 24, if I'm not mistaken. Mind, I stand corrected. This is pigment 20 from NYX, and it's a beautiful, beautiful, just crystal champagne shade. On the bottom part of the eye, again, we're not going very, very dark here. I'm using just a little bit of Dystopian from the Sultry palette, which is a matte dark brown. And again, this is a point where you're gonna wanna ask the client if she wears eyeliner on the bottom part of her waterline. If so, add that before the shadow, and that way you can start using the shadow to smoke it out. But if not, then you don't need to use it. I decided to keep the under eye pretty soft. So to blend that out, we used Birch from the Sultry palette as well. I'm then going to be popping in a little bit of that highlight onto the inner corner before we do any liner on the top lid. So I am taking the Pretty Vulgar gel liner that you guys have seen me been using consistently. I just really, really love it. It's such a good gel eyeliner. And I'm taking this on a tiny angle brush and really just making sure I work this neatly as possible. I feel like there's a universal girl code when it comes to doing eyeliner. Not only do I stop talking and almost hold my breath, but my client does as well without me having to tell them anything. So I think we all know to kind of stay as still as possible when it comes to liner. But don't be afraid to speak up and, you know, ask your client politely in case they have a little bit of like the wedding day jitters and nerves, to just remember to like stay still. That way you can do the eyeliner and execute it perfectly. So once the liner is on, if you see that the client has really hooded eyes, then I would tell them to not open their eyes until I let them know that it's okay, because this liner is gel, so it's still wet. If their eyes are fairly hooded, the liner could transfer. So in order to avoid that, I have them just keep their eyes closed if I see that it will be touching. Also, liner is a total optional step. I've had a lot of my brides recently too kind of do the no liner look with just having the lashes be the drama that they need, and that's also just extremely pretty and fresh looking for brides. But again, that's up to the client. Most of them, though, I will say, like the wing liner look. So, and I'm not one to hold back on a wing liner. If you feel like you want to sharpen up the edges, this would be the time to use a little bit of extra concealer and that MAC 252, which is so great for this, and just clean up that liner and make it look as sharp as possible. I feel like a sharp eyeliner is always the best way to go with the eye look. For the lashes, we are using some of Beto's lashes from Be Beauty, and these are in the style Boss Babe. They are so pretty. They are long and dramatic, but they're not full and like too full to where you can't appreciate the shadow. When she opens her eyes, you see the wispiness of the lashes, but you still see through them and you can appreciate the shadow. And then at this point is when you can just kind of hide the glue on the lash band. I have been loving the Benefit Roller Liner. It's such a good liquid liner. It's super pigmented, super dark. It's easy to use. And then this is also something that I look out for. I will have the client look down and out to the side, and I will apply liner right as close as possible onto the inner part of the top lid, kind of tight lining her top lid at the inner corner. And that way when she just looks straight on, it just looks like a flawless from beginning to end liner look. So that is something I highly recommend doing. And then you can add mascara at this point to kind of help combine the real lashes to the falsies, and really make sure you take your time in fanning out those lashes, making sure that they are up and not getting in her line of vision. And if their lashes are extremely straight, I would recommend investing in a teeny tiny eyelash curler to kind of just help pinch those eyelashes closer to the fall season, actually adhere them to them. Just look up I think I have one, it's from a brand called Reveal. Not too sure if it's still in existence, but I know they're out there, like I've seen them before. Now for the lips, I am using one of my favorite lip liners to use on brides is, I know it's gonna sound so cliche, but it is Whirl from MAC. It is such a pretty deep blush tone, and what I like to do is just kind of apply this onto the outer edges of the lips first, which is like the outer corners, and then not fill in the center, but leave that center open for play basically. So I'm filling in with just a neutral nude cream lipstick from MAC. I have a MAC palette that I have had for a long time. I don't even know if they still sell it, but you can always refill it, and I just pick like my favorite nudes from that little palette if they're going for a cream look. I wanted to go with something a little bit more moisturizing, like especially a more like glossy look. So I didn't go with a matte liquid lipstick. I went with just a regular cream lipstick and then applied gloss straight on top. This is also another one from MAC. They are just probably one of my favorite lip products. I used to use a lot of ColourPop, but I find that ColourPop is become extremely drying, and the crack that you get, like the cracking of the lipstick, is just not cute. So I've kind of been switching out my lipsticks a little bit here. I'm also just going to apply some finishing touches, such as the brow bone highlight, and making sure I wipe off any excess fallout that may have occurred with the eyes with that angle brush from Luxie. And then I'm just going to be setting with the MAC Fix Plus to add that little bit of extra hydration. If your client is oily, don't do this step. Just go straight to the final setting spray, which is my all-time favorite, which is the All Nighter from Urban Decay. I have yet to find one that would replace this. So give a generous mist of setting spray with this, and that way you know that they are locked and loaded for the whole day. Now, I loved that Beto came wearing a, what do you call it? Like a strapless top, because most brides are going to be showing their décolleté area, and when they are showing this area, I always ask if they want a little bit of body makeup. So in this case, you can cover up any imperfections that she may have on her décolleté or upper back or shoulders. In this case, she doesn't have any, but to make it just pop and glisten, I went over with a little bit more of a illuminating cream. I used the Becca Backlight Primer on her décolleté, and then just went over with that Amrezy and Anastasia Beverly Hills highlight on her collarbone. And then I'm just going to be using this Gleam by Melanie Mills setting spray. You can use it on the face as well, but like I said, Urban Decay is my go-to for the face. But I'm going to spray this all over her décolleté to just kind of set that highlight. I'm holding my hand up so that way she doesn't breathe too much of it in on that first spray. And this, you guys, is the completed look. Let me know what you guys think of this tutorial. If you have any questions, don't forget to hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I will see y'all in my next one. Bye, guys.